Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders. Welcome to another episode of Sean's Movie Crusades. My name is Sean Wasserkrug. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about the top movies of the first half of 2019. Basically, after tonight's releases of Yesterday and Annabelle Comes Home, we are now at the end of June, so we are through the first 6 months of the year. So I decided to release my top films of 2019 so far. Now, unlike my normal rankings that you guys see when I do reviews, I normally do a top 10 of 2019 so far. I'm not going to be doing that here particularly because, frankly, the way the top 10 is right now, there are certain films that, yes, they're ranked in my top 10, but I also don't consider them top movies so far. I mean, yes, they are, in terms of the rankings, they are in my top 10, but I don't think that some of them have earned the right to be considered top films of 2019. So it's not going to be a top 10. It's more like a top 5 with an honorable mention, so 6 films overall. So yeah, that's kind of how we're going to do it. I'm going to go with the honorable mention, and then I'm going to go to my top 5, which if you guys will follow my show, you guys probably should already know what this top 5 is, but I wanted to kind of just talk about them overall, just kind of how the way it was with the movies so far this year. Now, movies so far this year, I remember if you guys go back and you see my most anticipated films of 2019 so far, there was a lot of movies I was really, really excited for, and I was overall just anticipating seeing, hence why they were on the most anticipated list. But the problem with a lot of the films is a lot of them were just okay. Like, had potential to be fantastic. The trailers really sold me on it, but then once I got into the film, they were just fine overall. And I've seen that with a lot of other reviewers and critics, is that this has been the summer of mediocrity, where they're not awful, but they're not great. They're just okay. And that's kind of why I didn't do that's why I'm not doing a top 10. While there are films in my top 10, they're okay. They're fine. They're solid films, but I don't consider them top films of the year, whereas these 6 films, blew me away, made me real excited. I loved watching them, and I actually saw all these films more than once. Whereas the other films, they were kind of like, I saw them once, I'm okay. And so that's why we're going with a top 6, technically, of 2019 so far. And then at the end of the year, obviously, I'll have my top films of 2019, which will have, obviously, the second half of the year. We'll have most disappointed, most surprising films, top performances, all that jazz. I'm not going to do all that this time around for the first half. I'm just going to do this list here. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now, in terms of top films of 2019, I'm not a big ranker guy. I hate and I know I do it on Letterboxd, and I hate doing it on Letterboxd. But when people go, "What's your score for this film?" And I hate doing that personally because some movies are fantastic films, but I wasn't a big fan of them because they weren't my kind of film. So they don't get they get like a honorary 8 or 9 by me, but in terms of rewatchability, it's a 0. Whereas there are other films that are not, great put together films, but I enjoyed the hell out of them, and they have incredible rewatchability, so they'd get like an 8 or a 9 for me. So it's like, well, how does this, Oscar-nominated film get a 9 or a 7 from you, but then these movies that are considered rotten via Rotten Tomatoes are getting 8s and 9s over here? And it's because it's how I feel about the film. Everyone's opinions are different. Everyone likes certain films over others. Some people like certain types of films over others. So that's why I'm not a big fan of rankings. That's why whenever I do my reviews, I don't give you guys a score. I go, do I recommend it or do I not recommend it? And then go from there. So these 6 films, personally though, I loved. Out of all the movies that came this year, I've liked a lot of things. I've hated things. I've been kind of meh on things. But these 6 films are the ones that I went, I loved these movies. And for anyone who knows me outside of these videos here, I probably have talked your ear off about most of these films because I was so excited to talk about these films overall. So yeah, let's go ahead and go into the honorable mention, or number 6 film of the year. And that's going to go to John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. Now, I love John Wick. I love the style. I love the performance of Keanu Reeves. I love how hard he actually does in terms of training for these roles. He's not a guy who uses a stunt double for the hard stuff. He actually goes out there, trains his body, practices, and does all of his stuff to the point where, and I think everyone has seen it on the internet so far, is that he doesn't even really take money for these roles. He gives them to the stunt teams and the choreographers because they don't get paid as much, and Keanu thinks that they're the reasons why these films work. I love John Wick Chapter 3. I think it's a fantastic film. The action is utterly insane. Yes, the story, the world or the story, could it be tighter, could it be better? Absolutely. But you go into this movie to see the guns a-blazing craziness of this world, and John Wick does it to the top of the list. I mean, it's one of the most action heavy and one of the most best action films I've seen in quite a long time. Whether it's the open, and for the most part, spoilers for this. Like, I'm going to give you a spoiler alert for these rankings, because to really talk about these films, I'm going to have to go into detail on certain parts. So, spoiler alert for these films. Even though one of them in particular is brand new still. But like I said, this is your spoiler warning right now. With John Wick Chapter 3, whether it's the opening scene in the library or the scene in the, I guess you would call it a museum, with all the knives, that scene, whew, I love that scene. I could rewatch that scene on repeat. Just that knife, the throwing of the knives, the knife battle. I loved all that. Halle Berry does a solid job in the film. Ian McShane obviously does a solid job in the film overall. The dogs. That particular scene in Casablanca, where Halle Berry and Keanu Reeves are fighting off the hordes of men, and Halle Berry's dogs are fighting. Insane choreography. The dogs do a phenomenal job. Those dogs are terrifying. The final battles, where it basically kind of felt like a video game, where John Wick had to go through chapters and levels to get to the final boss, I thought was fantastic. When he goes up against the guys from the raid, love the choreography, and I love the respect that the villains actually treat John Wick in this, because he's kind of like a hero to them, or an idol. So when they get the upper hand on him, they don't just try to take advantage. They kind of like go, here, get up, reset. I want to win this fairly, and all that stuff. Mark Dacascos, Dacascos as a Zero. Loved him. I wish we could have gotten more of him. Obviously we won't get to, but I would love to have seen more from Zero, or more films with Zero in it. The only real negatives I had about John Wick Chapter 3, I was not a fan of Asia Kate Dillon. I thought she was the worst part of the film. And then, of course, some of the problems I usually have with John Wick films is, how he bleeds through bullets. And, certain situations, like especially in the final battle when the people break into the Continental and they have all the armor where normal bullets don't penetrate, so they have to use special bullets. He bleeds through those bullets when it's like, dude, you need to preserve those. Like, there's so many more people out there to kill. You need to stop waiting. Like, he shoots one dude, 6 times, and he was dead after the first shot. There's little things like that bug me, but I still love that film. I still enjoyed that film immensely, and that's why John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum is the honorable mention, but number 6 on the list. Going to number 5. This was at number 1 for quite a long time for me. Until it finally got knocked off back in, I think it was the end of April. And you know why it got knocked off, because if you guys know what came out at the end of April, clearly this is why that movie got dropped off the list. But that goes to Jordan Peele's Us. Now, I know this movie's kind of, not necessarily controversial, but I know there's a lot of people that either love or hate this film. I was one of the people that loved it. I loved the performances. I thought Lupita Nyong'o did a fantastic job. And frankly, in terms of performances for actresses this year, she's the one right now that I probably give the top performance to for a lead actress. I thought Lupita Nyong'o did a fantastic job playing both Adelaide and Red, especially near the end of the film when we got everything kind of flipped. I love the performances even more. Winston Duke, I thought, did a great job as Gabe. He was playing that kind of nerdy dad, even though he's burly as fuck. I mean, that dude, he's not a guy you want to get into a fist fight with, but he plays it so nerdy and, dad jokey kind of way that it's he takes that aura of, this badass guy that we remember from Black Panther, and just kind of comes off like a regular guy. And so, but even when we get to see his tethered Abraham, I mean, that's where we see that's how we know Winston Duke, because it's just like this tank. And I thought Winston Duke did a great job of playing two sides of that, and I thought it was very believable, and I really enjoyed his performance overall. The daughter, Shahadi Wright Joseph, I probably said that wrong, as Zora. I thought Zora did a great job, and then Umbre as the tethered version of her, I thought was incredibly creepy. I almost wish we would have had more of Umbre in the film, but what she was in, I thought she did a stellar job overall. And I thought that Zora, once stuff started to go, crazy, I thought the Zora character really stepped up and had really became a powerful character. Once again, her and Gabe, like Winston Duke's character, they do kind of fall by the wayside near the end of the film. And I wish they would have had a little bit more to do near the end, but I enjoyed their characters throughout. Then, of course, Evan Alex. I don't think enough people are talking about Evan Alex. I thought his performance as Jason and his tethered Pluto, especially Pluto, was a fantastic performance by him. I thought his version of Pluto was creepy, but then also very well done in terms of understanding why the character was the way he was. And then, of course, Jason, I thought was well done, and I love the way he performed near the end of the film as the story unfolded. I love the way Jordan Peele told this story. Now, are there certain things where I was like, oh, they could have done that better? Yeah, sure. That's why it's number 5 on the list. But I liked how the world was played and how the stories and the twists and turns. Are there certain situations where, like, well, if this has happened, how does the underworld or the underground and the upper levels work? Like, how does that mesh? Yeah, there wasn't enough time to really explain that. But from what we got in this film, I actually quite enjoyed it. And I know there are some people going, well, I saw the twist coming from a mile away. This is one of the things that pisses me off most with a lot of people. Just because you figure out a twist early doesn't make the film bad. I will die on this hill that Shutter Island with Leonardo DiCaprio is a great film. Just because you figured out the twist that it was all happening in his head and that he was an inmate the entire time. I mean, spoiler alert for a movie that's, like, I think 10 years old now. Good for you that you figured that out. Good, I mean, that doesn't make it a bad movie. That just makes you, clever. Same thing goes with this film. Good for you that you figured out Red and Adelaide got switched earlier in the film. That doesn't mean the movie sucked. That doesn't make the movie bad. Just because you figure out a twist early doesn't mean that the movie sucks. And for people to knock a film because of that, you're not understanding a film overall in a certain aspect. And that's what really bugged me with a lot of people. When I saw people go, oh, I didn't like Us. And I was like, okay, well, what didn't you like about it? Well, I saw the twist coming from a mile away. Okay, that's not a negative to the film. What didn't you like about the film? And that was kind of the only thing they could really argue, is that they could see the twist coming. Who cares? That doesn't make it a bad film. But I really liked Us, and it just came out on streaming and Blu-ray and stuff like that. So if you guys haven't seen Us, go out of your way to see it. It's a fantastic film. Jordan Peele did a great job with his sophomore film, and I can't wait to see what more he does. I love the way he did the music for the film, the way he shot certain things. Yes, it's a very big world that he created with Us, and a lot of it was left unexplained, but without going into a huge exposition monologue, which he kind of did near the end, it's very hard to get all those answers, or those questions answered. But yeah, that's why Us is number 5 on the list, and it is one of those films that I think about quite a bit, and I have seen it since, I haven't seen it since it came out. I want to rewatch it here soon, but it's one of those movies that has stuck with me all the months after it came out. So Us is number 5 on the list. Going to number 4 was a movie that, I mean, it looked good. Like, trailer-wise, it looked good, and it had potential, but I didn't know I was going to love it as much as I did until I got to see it, and that is Booksmart. A lot of people will call Booksmart the female version of Superbad, and okay, cool. Because it is. It basically is. It's the female version of Superbad. Even more so that one of the main characters, Beanie Feldstein, is Jonah Hill's sister. okay, that's fine with me. Superbad is one of the best comedies of in recent memory, and so having a female version of it is not a negative. I quite enjoyed this film. I loved how Olivia Wilde directed this film. I love the cast. This is a movie, like I said in my review, where it's going to be one of those films that you look back 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and you're going to start noticing, oh, that person's in this movie. That person was nobody at this time. Now look at them today, and I feel like this cast is a lot like that. I mean, you got Caitlin Diver. Most people just know her from Last Man Standing, the Tim Allen TV show. I thought she did a fantastic job as Amy. Beanie Feldstein, I mean, she's been in and out of certain little things here or there. I thought she was great as Molly. Of course, you got Jason Sudeikis. I mean, he's Olivia Wilde's husband. So I mean, he was small. He was great in his small little role. Lisa Kudrow, Will Forte, Victoria Ragusa, Mason Gooding, Skylar Gisondo. I love this kid. I remember the first time I saw him, which I think was Vacation, the Vacation remake. I couldn't stand this kid. But this kid has grown on me. I love him in Santa Clarita Diet and everything he's in now. And anything he's going to be in, I'm going to check out. I loved his performance in here as Jared. And he's a very enjoyable character, and he's a very enjoyable character actor. And then, of course, the big standout for me was Billie Lourd as Gigi. I love Billie Lourd as Gigi. She was comically hilarious throughout the entire film, and she wasn't one-noted. Like, just when you thought she was one-noted, something would happen that would just make her a little bit more unique, a little bit more different. I just love the way this cast worked together. I love the way the story was written. I loved how the humor went, and I loved the heart that this film had. Caitlin Dever and Beanie Feldstein as Amy and Molly. You believed their friendship. You trusted them. It wasn't like just two actors putting on a performance. You felt their friendship throughout, just like we did with Michael Cera and Jonah Hill in Superbad. I love these two together. If they had made more films together, I'm down for that. I would love to see more of the adventures of Molly and Amy, even though I don't think we will. Like I said, overall, though, I really, really enjoyed Booksmart. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, because I know this movie's not out everywhere, but if you guys have a chance to see Booksmart, go out of your way to see it, because it is one fantastic coming-of-age comedy about the last day of high school. And it definitely ranks up there as one of the best teen comedies I've seen in the last 2 decades. Going to number 3, now this one, I remember when I saw the trailer for this, I was like, this has the potential to be either really, really good or really kind of disappointing. Luckily for me, it was awesome, which is why it's rated number 3. And that goes to Rocket Man. Elton John is a very eccentric and very colorful artist. But we all know his music. We all love his music. And Taron Egerton is one of my favorite young actors out there. I mean, I love The Kingsman. And, I mean, he was great in Eddie the Eagle, Sing, which he sang Elton John in that as well. And, of course, Elton John was in Kingsman too. So it was just kind of like writings on the wall that this was going to be meant to be. And when I first heard that Taron Egerton was going to play Elton John, I was like, well, he doesn't look like Elton John, so how's that going to work? But then the first trailer came out, and I was like, holy crap, they made him look like Elton John. And that's the great thing about this film, is that there was maybe some quick moments here and there where you're like, well, that's Taron Egerton. But for most of the film, you're like, that looks like Elton John. I believe Taron Egerton is Elton John throughout this entire film. His performance is one of my favorite of the year. In fact, just like I said with Lupita Nyong'o, as her being my favorite actress performance of the year, Taron Egerton as Elton John is my number 1 performance of the year so far. The music, beautifully well done. I love the choreography to the musical numbers. I loved the young performers who played young Elton. I loved Bryce Dallas Howard's performance of Elton's mother. She was horrible, but she did such a fantastic job overall. Jamie Bell as Bernie Taupin, as like Elton John's best friend. I thought Jamie Bell, who I've kind of been like, he's an okay actor, I thought knocked it out of the park and is easily one of my favorites for supporting actors this year. I really just enjoyed everything about this film overall. The performances, the musical numbers, Richard Madden as John Reed. I loved everything about this film. It was incredibly colorful. It's a sad story, but also a happy one at the same time, but mostly sad. There was only really one negative part I had about the film overall, and that was him marrying a woman. It wasn't that he did it. It was just more or less like they glossed over it so quickly. It's like in and out in 5 minutes. That I felt like they either should have either removed it, which they couldn't because it's a biopic technically, or have given more time to it, because it just came and went, and there just wasn't enough time given to it. So it just felt very out of place with the rest of the film overall. But I loved Rocketman. I thought it was a fantastic overall film, and for anyone who liked Bohemian Rhapsody, this Dexter Fletcher, he directed basically the later half of Bohemian Rhapsody when Bryan Singer's whole thing happened. And so this was Dexter Fletcher really kind of given a full film, and I thought he knocked it out of the park. It's better than Bohemian Rhapsody in every way. And if you're going to give an Oscar to Rami Malek for Freddie Mercury, which he was great, I'm not knocking about anything at all, but he lip synced through that entire film. Taron Egerton sang every part of this role, and he put on just as good of a performance as Elton John as Rami Malek did as Freddie Mercury. So if we get to Oscars and Taron Egerton isn't nominated / potentially wins, then I really don't know what Taron Egerton could do as an actor, because he knocked this out of the park. This is his film, and I hope this leads or opens the door for him to do a lot more bigger and gutsier roles, because this was a very gutsy role overall for him, and I hope he's kicking down the doors in Hollywood right now because of this performance overall. So Rocketman goes to the number 3 spot. If you guys have not checked it out yet, go out of your way to check this out before it leaves theaters, because you will not be disappointed. These last two. I have been battling with myself over the past week or so with these last two films. Yes, there's this one of them's number 2 and one of them's number 1, but it's literally 1 and 1A for me. I love both these films very passionately. Both these films made me cry. Both these films made me happy, sad, all those things. The reason why this one is technically number 2 and the other one is technically number 1 was that in terms of the films as a whole, one is an incredible epic, 20-some years in the making, and the other one is also a movie 20-some years in the making. But there were certain things in one that I didn't particularly like or go for fully, whereas the other one I really had no qualms with and I had no problems with. So because I had no issues with that film, that's why it got the technical number 1 spot and why this one got the number 2 spot. But like I said, they are literally right here as 1A for me. But technically, if we're going to go by a ranking, this is number 2. And of course, that is Avengers Endgame. This film, just like with Avengers Infinity War, is a borderline masterpiece, 10 plus years in the making. The way the Russo brothers were able to pull this off, I still to this day don't know how they managed to do it, how they managed to get all these actors and this epic storyline to come to a beautiful conclusion. I mean, there was literally, the opening night that I watched it, there was at least 5 or 6 separate times of this movie where I cried. And there was one moment where I was so overly emotional in this one scene. I think anyone who knows me knows the scene I'm talking about, that I was uncontrollably kind of weeping because of just how much amazingness was on screen. And it wasn't because it was a sad moment. It was a fantastic, phenomenal moment. It was just like feeling overload for me. And I just I couldn't contain it anymore. Like, it just had to come out. And like my face was just streaming with tears. Not because I was sad, it's because I was so uncontrollably happy with what was happening on screen. And because of how that made me feel, that's why I want to almost give it the number 1 spot. But like I said, there were 2 things that I wasn't really particularly a big fan of. And then there were certain story elements where it's like, that didn't make a lot of sense why these characters would have done this. Where I didn't feel that way towards the other film, and that's why it's number 1. For anyone who has seen or follows my channel, you guys know I had a very lengthy review about this, and then I also had a very, very, very lengthy spoiler cast with 3 of my friends talking about this film. So it's very hard to really talk about this movie any more than I already have, because I basically have wasted like 4 hours of video talking about it. But yeah, the performances, Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, probably my second and third favorite performances of the year, right behind Taron Egerton. Ruffalo and Chris Hemsworth, well, those were the 2 things that I wasn't particularly happy about with the characters. I still enjoyed their performances overall. Scarlett Johansson, I thought, did a great job, as well as everyone. I mean, I can just go down the entire list. I loved everyone's performances in this. Josh Brolin, back as Thanos. While he didn't get as much to do in terms of acting as he did in Infinity War, which I still think it was a crime that he at least didn't get nominated overall for that movie. I loved his performance in this overall. Everything about this film I loved. The heartbreaking sadness by the end of it. It's going to stand the test of time. There's no other franchise that's going to be able to do or pull off what the MCU has. And Endgame was the resistance of the finale of it. Now we got more films coming out. And it's just like, as great as these movies are probably going to be that are going to be coming out, they're just not going to be able to hit what Endgame would. Now, yes, I was not a fan of Fat Thor, or what he's being called now as Bro Thor. Or I wasn't a big fan of Professor Hulk either, or at least how Professor Hulk acted in the beginning of the film. And I wasn't a fan of them sending Hawkeye and Black Widow to Vormir without them knowing what was going to happen. Now, yes, I mean, like I said, it's tit for tat. It's nitpicking. But yeah, I love this film. I'm gonna watch this film over and over and over again. Even though it's 3 hours long. But yeah, that's why it's 1A, or technically number 2 overall for the films. Now, going to my number 1. Obviously, it's the other film that just came out this past week or two. So I'm going to try to talk about it as less as I can about spoilers, but like I said, be on the lookout. As I mentioned already, spoilers. But that's going to go to Toy Story 4. The reason why Toy Story 4 is number 1 for me is I thought it was almost a near-perfect film. Yes, I can see how people can complain that a lot of the old toys don't get their fair shake, mainly Jessie, but this was not their story. This was a Woody story. Yes, Buzz even gets a short hand of the stick in this one as well, but once again, it's not his story. It is Woody's story. It is a very beautiful telling story. The levels that they hit in this film about, not necessarily unwanted, but basically passing the torch and staying put because you think it's the right thing to do, to living your life, and to the ability to take that jump into the unknown and not know what's going to happen, but just know that you're doing what's best for you. There's so much stuff happening in this film, and I thought it's done incredibly beautifully. The character Gabby is one of my favorite characters of the year. They could have just wrote her as a by-the-numbers villain, but there's so many layers to her character, and once you actually find out her motives and her reasoning for things, she's not a villain anymore, she's a character. And there's one particular moment in the film, I'm not going to say what it is, but you guys know the moment I'm talking about if you've seen Toy Story 4, that literally broke my heart and audibly made me gasp when it happened, and it made me want nothing more than to see a resolution for the character of Gabby. Bo Peep, I thought, was done incredibly well by who voiced Bo Peep? Annie Potts. I thought Annie Potts did a fantastic job. Obviously, Tom Hanks is Woody. I mean, I love Tom Hanks, and Woody's always been one of my favorite characters. Keanu Reeves as Duke Kaboom was hilarious, and I hope we see, if not more Toy Story films, because obviously the end point of this film kind of, not going to say that, I'm going to save that because of spoilers. It definitely makes it very hard to do a Toy Story 5 without separating stories, or it could branch off to a whole nother spin-off of movies. I hope this isn't the last we see of Duke Kaboom. I hope we get more of Duke Kaboom. And I also loved Key and Peele's Bunny and Ducky. They could have just been over-the-top characters that were very annoying and had way too much screen time, but I thought they had just the right amount. I thought they fleshed out the characters really well, And while yes, they were the comedic high points of the film, I thought everything they did landed beautifully. While yes, people thought the ventriloquist dummies were scary in the film, yes, they are creepy. But I also love the layers of that they added to the story. Like I said, I loved everything about this film. I love the story. I love the way it was told. I love that they called stuff back to previous films. I love that they explained things that weren't explained prior to this film, so that we were left wondering about in Toy Story 3. I thought it was the the right progression to this story of these characters that we have been following for the last 24, 25 years. And it was like I said, beautifully well done story. I was in tears when the story ended. And it's one of my favorites of the year, just like with Avengers Endgame. And that is why it is the #1 film of the first half of 2019 so far. Now, like I said, with the greatness about this and Avengers Endgame, tomorrow I could wake up going, I like Avengers Endgame more, and then the next day I'll be like, no, I like Toy Story 4 more. These two are going to flip-flop in my brain probably until something else comes along that could potentially rival it. And I don't know. Based off the current slate of films coming out for the next rest of the year, there are films that I'm excited about. I don't know if they're going to reach the levels of Endgame and Toy Story 4. So we'll see. Who knows? I didn't think Toy Story 4 was going to be the #1 spot. I thought Endgame was going to stay at the top spot for the rest of the year. But yet Toy Story, like as soon as I got out of that movie and I was like, I hate to say it, I'm going to have to put this above Endgame. But we'll see. We got 6 more months of 2019 left. I can't believe it's already June, or it's already almost July. But yeah, but that's the list. I hope you guys enjoyed the list. Go ahead and leave your comments below. Tell me what your top films of 2019 so far are. Go ahead and post what were you disappointed with? What didn't you like? What did you love? What performances? Like I said, I mentioned Taron Egerton, Lupita Nyong'o, Downey, Evans, Tom Hanks, Annie Potts. Tell me what your top performances of the year so far were. But yeah, if you guys like this video, go and hit the like button. I'm sorry I coughed a lot through this entire damn video, but my throat's pretty dry. If you guys feel like this video is worth sharing, go ahead and hit that share button. But most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that way you guys stay up to date with all the latest channels, or all the latest videos that pop up on the channel. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys loved these movies as much as I did. If there are some movies that you guys love that I did not mention, feel free to leave them in the comments. But yeah, here's to another 6 months of movie watching. I hope you guys are still enjoying the show. And if you guys are, obviously, you're probably subscribing. And I hope you follow me on all the social media outlets you see below. Yeah, next week, we've got Ari Aster's Midsummer. And all of you guys who follow this channel know how much I loved Hereditary. And then, of course, we've got the next Spider-Man Far From Home. So I hope you guys stay tuned to that. Those will be next week. As well as I'm still looking to get some more people to pop up on the show for some subjects and stuff like that, so be on the lookout for those videos. I have a lot of stuff planned for this channel, and I hope you guys are along for the ride. And if you guys are, thank you for being a part of it. And if you guys feel like you want some of your friends to join on, tell them to hop on the back seat. Let's go for this journey of Sean's Movie Crusades. So until next time, till I see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.